Episode 54, Fired Coaches podcast. We have Terri Mitchell, who has had a ton of experience in the women's basketball realm of college basketball, played at Duquesne, coached at Arizona State, was an assistant at Marquette, and then a head coach for a long time, was also associate head coach at Pittsburgh as well. She's one of 10 members that's in the Marquette M Club Hall of Fame on the women's basketball side. She's also in the Wisconsin Basketball Coaches Association Hall of Fame as well. Coach Mitchell, sincerely thank you for taking some time to sit down this evening and tell your story.
I absolutely was excited when you reached out to me. I don't think many people get excited about, oh, fired coaches, let's talk. But I love to process things and discuss with people about what I learned through it. So, because that's kind of I'm always learning, always figuring things out. I couldn't believe it when you reached out and I was all about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We connected on the phone a week ago and honestly appreciate you taking some time and you're just sharing off air. You're kind of going out and getting to see some games and things like that while you're out of it a little bit right now. And I guess, we can kind of start there. What have you noticed or what, since there's been maybe some games or things you've gotten out to, what's kind of your pulse on the early season so far, just from like a coaching perspective of, it doesn't have to be trends, but anything that you see maybe now that you're stepping back from it at this point?
I think NIL has been a huge deal. That's the biggest trend I have watched. One thing I've noticed, I'll just use the Big East Conference. I saw a couple years ago, a lot of the star players left and went to other conferences because I don't know for sure, but I think they were getting paid a lot of money. So then I think people start evaluating, and it's not every school. I'm not speaking for every school in the Big East, but I
Sure.
watched some players leave and go to other situations. And so I think NIL makes a huge difference. It's taking people out of, the conference and putting them somewhere else. But early on, I think the other part of it is the parity. I watched UConn. They're amazing. I've tuned in South Carolina, but there's a lot of other people on any given night. I know that's a coaching term we use, but I do think I watched UCLA and Oklahoma the other night, and just the firepower of those programs. I think it's going to be a great year. I think we're going to see upsets. And I think there's just a lot of players that we're going to celebrate this year that are beyond the normal 4 or 5 names you're always talking about. I think it's going to go much broader than that, and it'll be exciting.
Interesting. Do you think, with obviously the NIL movement, do you think that has brought in more parity to women's basketball, or has it shifted like the UConns, the South Carolinas, elevated them to another level?
I think it's shifted to the power conferences who have the money, but I also think it brought other conferences up to say, hey, if we want to compete, we have to give our money to women to be able to get some of these good players and have them stay. Have them stay so they're not jumping. So in some ways, yes, it shifted, but in the other ways, I think it woke people up to say, hey, we have a great program here in this quote unquote, I hate mid-major term, but it's used. And now we're going to do what it takes to keep them, because there is something to be said for happiness and finding your place. And some players just don't want to leave. But I think it's good that now they're saying, all right, in order for you to stay, we're going to provide this for you, alumni providing whatever it is. Listen, the train has left the station. We can debate over and over. Is it good? Is it bad? It's here. So now what do schools do with it? And how do we make it competitive, and how do we make it the best situation for everyone involved? Because there's 355, whatever it is, Division I teams, which is not equal at all. It wasn't equal before. It's become less equal. But just how do we keep the spark of the upsets, right? In the end, say everyone's cheering for the underdog. We want that underdog mentality. So I think it's a lot to discuss, and a lot of people and alums can help that and help the athletes along the way.
For sure. And I think, again, personally, I've been very, call the old man on the porch screaming at the clouds or whatever, but about like how things have changed. And I'm not obviously for that, but like you said, it's here. And, in some ways it's kind of given, with really not a lot of guardrails, it's kind of given some schools, conferences, whatever it may be, the kind of creativity to kind of, figure it out, right? Like you said, like, what can we do to help them? So in some ways it has allowed, some schools, I think, that have, you see it in certain things on the college football side, and articles about Texas Tech and how much money they've invested in. Like, some ways it's given people a chance to, if you want to put your money forward, go ahead. So, which is kind of interesting. I guess going back to the playing days at Duquesne, where'd you grow up originally?
I'm from
Were you
Harrisburg.
Harrisburg? Okay.
Harrisburg, PA. Went to Bishop McDevitt,
Okay.
and a proud Crusader, Bishop McDevitt Crusader. And we were 126-7 in my 4 years. It was
Wow.
Great run. It was amazing run, and I was clearly a Division II talent. Like, I, because all my recruiting was Division II, and at the last moment, couple schools D1 came into my life, George Mason, uh, Holy Cross, and Duquesne. And they had just turned Division 1, but they, more importantly, they're offering a full scholarship. And so it was so important for my family, for myself to be able to have the opportunity. Um, and it's really a big reason why I coach, because everyone was saying that college was supposed to be the best years of your life, and it wasn't my best years. I got an outstanding education, but I think Duquesne was just embarking on what Division 1 was all about, and it wasn't just that we lost, there just wasn't the commitment there. There
Sure.
wasn't the commitment, with, like, we were D1, and so out of that, Marcus, you've heard this statement before, but, I may not be able to control my circumstances, I can control my response, and so in college, I had decided, I'm gonna be a D1 coach. I'm going to change someone else's experience because mine wasn't the best.
That's awesome. That's actually, I mean, not awesome that you went through that, but that's awesome
Right.
that that's what kind of led to that. I guess going back to, you said kind of late in the process, George Mason, Holy Cross, Duquesne come in. Was that late in your season, end of the school year? Like when was that?
That was more towards the end. I mean, we weren't sophisticated back then with the recruiting that we are now. So we're talking about 1985. I graduated high school. So you weren't doing anything till towards the end. And so really it was a decision I made in the spring. And like I said, talent wise, and I would encourage anyone, have a fair evaluation of yourself, or your parents have a fair evaluation of yourself. And for me, it was just a financial decision. I could go for free versus a partial. Probably would have enjoyed my basketball experience being in Division 2, because that's where I was. I had the head for the game. I was smart. I was going to outwork you. I was going to do all of that. But obviously, there's better athletes out there and what they did. And Duquesne was in the Atlantic 10, which everything's changed, Atlantic 10. But we were St. Joe's, Temple, Penn State, and Rutgers were all in the top 25.
Oh, wow.
And that was my conference that, say, "Hey, welcome to Division 1. Here you go." So it wasn't so much about losing, which I hate losing, but it was more about what I was learning. And in that process, I thought, I want to do this because I want to give people a positive experience. And, Duquesne, fast forward to 2025, is a great program. They won a lot. So I'm happy to see that that commitment was made. Obviously, through the years, they brought in some great coaches.
How did the connection end up with the GA at Arizona State from Duquesne and being from PA?
This is great. I worked Kathy Rush basketball camp. That is unheard of now because of college players stay at their schools, right? They're working out and stuff. We didn't have that. We had our summers. So how did we stay in shape? For 8 weeks, I worked Kathy Rush basketball camp, and there was two camps in the East. It was Mike Flynn's Blue Star camp, and it was Kathy Rush camp. In the 2 weeks of recruiting, all the college coaches came through. So never sending a resume, just getting to chat to coaches on the side. Kathy called me up and said, "Okay, I have two places that would like to hire you, Dartmouth or Arizona State." And for whatever reason, growing up in PA, I don't know why, I always wanted to live in Arizona. So I jumped on the Arizona State GA and packed up my car all by myself. Got my triple A. Was that no triple A when you get the highlighter? And I drove across country by myself, pulled up to a house with 3 guys that were GAs as well, and it was Travis, Trent, Tom, and Terry. And
Get
that was my
out, all
roommate,
teas.
all T's, and that was my roommates, and we were poor as heck, and we were just all finding our way, but I loved every second of it.
It's funny, I've shared this on previous episodes a while back, but, about how I think, like, there's a podcast to be said for coaches just in that first year, whatever your first year was, because, mine was at UW Superior up in the northwest corner and, not making any money, living on the edge, living with a guy above a house of where somebody else lived below, and everyone's got their own story and what they did to make it. But I feel like, even going back to that year, very similar to yours, you're talking about that drive across the country. I'm pretty sure you could remember so many vivid days because you literally remember like what your meals were, what
Yeah.
you were making for money, what you were doing in the office. I mean, because you just live and breathe it, and you know that you're like, I don't want to say on borrowed time, but like, okay, this can't last forever. And obviously a GA doesn't last forever, but you just know in terms of funding and the time in your life, like you have a chance to impress people and gain an experience, and it's short lived. And it's just, I think, a really, really interesting time. So, what memories do you have from that GA that really kind of stand out to you?
so much of what you just talked about of just you were gonna do whatever it took. Like, I had gas cards, they were a thing back then, Sunoco, Exxon, and that's where I did my grocery shopping because I would go there and get rice. A bag of rice can last you a really, really long time. But this is a story, this is amazing. So Lisa Jones is an official, and she does Final Fours. She is great for women's basketball, she's out west, and she was on the team at Arizona State. So I'm only a year older than these players, and the staff all left for 3 weeks and said, "You got it. You have the conditioning. Figure it out." Because you didn't have the strength and conditioning coaches. You didn't have all the sophistication we have now. So I'm like, "All right, so I'm just gonna do the things that we did." So I said, "Okay," and I had a practice or a time to condition, and a couple players showed up late. And I didn't yell, I didn't do anything. I said, "I'll see you guys tomorrow at 6:30 or 6," whatever I said, and they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not playing. If you're gonna be late, we're gonna train early in the morning." And they showed up, and I put them through it. Well, Lisa Jones pulled me aside, like, a couple years ago and said they never forgot that, she never forgot that, and they knew then that I was separating myself
You
out,
weren't
and
the
I had.
player anymore. You weren't the
Right. I wasn't the player. I wasn't This was not going to be a fun 3 weeks. The coaches are away. Let's do what we want. I took it very serious so that when those coaches came back from recruiting that we'd have a team that was in shape.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
obviously a lot of growth for you, and obviously, which I mean, I think right for many GAs, it's that separation of. I think when you start right, it's like, well, I'm their age, and you can be the I don't want to say the buddy, right, but the good cop, and everybody leans
Yes.
to because it's like you're my age and you just got done, and but then there's that separation that comes with that too, where it's like where you obviously the don't be late 6:30 in the morning. We're going to condition, and it's now Coach Mitchell and not Player Mitchell anymore.
Right. And I think that's a tough thing for players making the transition. I've watched it in my program, another program, a player's not quite understanding you have to make that separation. And you can, especially if you played with them and then you turn around, you're on staff. I think some players can do that, and I think other players cannot. Like they actually have to leave. They can't be around the same players they were out on a Friday night with. They have to go to a different program. But it's so important because whatever's being discussed in the office, it can never go back to the players. And you just don't know in a weak moment or you're out with the players that you would say something to compromise the integrity of the staff.
No, that's a great point, right? Because I think, like you said, whether it's, being out with them because these are my teammates that I went out to the bar with, or I
Right.
went and got food with, and I lived with, right? We had a lot, there's a lot of those situations where it's like, hey, you're now the fifth year senior and you're technically done, or you graduated, but you're still in that house. And like you said, it could be just the simplest thing that maybe the head coach doesn't even think of that shares it. And the loose lips sink ships kind of model, all of
Right.
a sudden it gets to the kid and now there's turmoil within the organization or the team or whatever. Um, so fast forward to Marquette, where you're an
Yeah.
assistant for 5 years. Um, I guess when you got there, did you ever envision that that would be a program that you would get the chance to take over?
No. And I'm going to just go back 2 seconds to say, and this is something I try to tell people because I've heard this, our players, when they graduate, what do you want to be? And so much of it is like, well, I want to be home or I want to be in this state. And I always say, go where the opportunity is. You can always go home. You can always go home or you can always move to the place you've always wanted to move, but go. So, like out of college, I was 1,000 miles away at Arizona. Then I went back and worked for Kathy Rush for a year
Okay.
before I went to Marquette. So 1,000 miles away, 100 miles away from Harrisburg, and now 800 miles away. And that's my first 3 years. I'm like, boom, boom, boom. But I was willing to do it for the dream. I knew nothing about Milwaukee, nothing about Marquette. So it was really every year I was starting over. So this is my third time. Okay, Arizona, I'm meeting people, learning the area. Okay, nope, now I'm in Norristown, PA. Okay, now I'm in the Milwaukee area. So did I dream that? No, but I was going to throw myself in because that was Marquette. The first time we ever went postseason happened when I was an assistant. We went to the NIT, and then we went 2 years to the NCAs. And then in Jim's, I think it was his fifth year, Jim Jaber, we were 8-20, and he really thought, and that was good. I mean, it was his thought. We did the most that we could do here at Marquette, and he took a job at Providence. And I just didn't feel that way. I felt like there was a commitment from Marquette, that they wanted to win, that they were going to give us the things that we needed, that they were growing. And we had also were changing from Great Midwest to Conference USA. So that's what happened in that fifth year where we went 8-20, because it's a whole new set of characters that you're learning from how to compete. So, he left, and then I was fortunate, and part of that separation, right? Because now I'm an assistant, but I'm 23, 24, 25. I became a head coach at 28. But because I had kept that separation, I love you guys, but you know what? I'm your coach, and the line is the line, and never faulted from that. That was a big reason why I got the job, because they could see that even though she's young, he has a coaching mentality, not a player mentality.
Well, and obviously, like you had pointed out, going to Arizona State, going 100 miles from home, and then going to Milwaukee. I mean, to me, by the age of 28, when you're taking over that program, you're well mature beyond your years based on taking opportunities and taking chances on yourself to really grow, right? And separate. Whereas a lot of 28-year-olds are maybe just taking their first GA after bouncing around a little bit or whatever it is, right? Trying to figure themselves out. So to me, it seems like you kind of obviously grew a lot in those early years that you kind of shared. And I think you make a great point too, the greater Midwest to Conference USA to Big East, all the changes that you saw, do you think it is an advantage or a disadvantage going into a new conference where you have to learn about obviously everybody, but they also have to learn about you? Like what are the positives and challenges to joining a new league as you saw, throughout your tenure there at Marquette?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's an advantage of they don't know me, they don't know our program, and they're going to have to learn real quick. And I was very defensive minded. I mean, obviously, everybody loves high scoring games, and trust me, I love high scoring games, but I love high scoring games doing it defensively. Right. I want to make point guards uncomfortable. So I think there was a niche that I had in the basketball community about my defense and things that I would do. On the other hand, I think it keeps it fresh. I mean, I think the advantage is it keeps it fresh. Okay, I'm learning about new programs. I will say, I think I made, as a leader of the program, a huge recruiting mistake. When we went from Conference USA to the Big East, and the majority of the schools were on the East Coast, and knowing that Marquette people come from all over, I spent a lot of time in 2 to 3 years really recruiting the East Coast hard. And I will tell you, I had players outside the 6-hour radius from Minnesota to Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. I mean, it's more than 6 hours, but just in that radius is really a gold mine of players. Illinois, I mean, from the Chicago, from the suburbs, Minnesota at the time, St. Thomas was D2, so you had Minnesota as the only Division I school. And that I got away from when I went into the Big East, because I thought, oh, I got to go East Coast now because we're playing out there all the time. And I think I wasted energy, and they were some of the years where we really dropped off because we got close with players because we were winning and we had a good reputation. But at the end of the day, they wanted to stay on the East. And I know things change, and you could say, oh, Marquette has a national reputation. I get it. But I also know that within this range, this radius was my most successful. I can't speak for the other coaches. Like Minnesota, I'll use this example. I had to get first team all conference players before I got Angel Robinson, who was the player of the year. So I didn't jump in and say, I'm trying to get Angel Robinson the player of the year. I chipped away.
Had to break the ice almost.
Yes, chipped away, got player after player who had a positive experience, got to know more coaches in Minnesota, keep chipping away. And then the player of the year says, I want to come down there and play. And she really changed our program. And
Sure.
then you have Crystal Ellis, who's, a Hall of Famer as well, in your own backyard, because you're taking care of your own backyard. So I think that's where we kind of fell off a little bit. And then I got back to our roots. And I tried to use that mentality at Pittsburgh, but mine was more the day to day. But I think they fell into the same pit hole. I think they went national. Lance, the head coach, had a great reputation for recruiting. So recruit a lot in Florida and South Carolina and stuff. They're not coming to Pittsburgh
Right.
until you really establish yourself as one of the best in the country. And so I think we had a lot of wasted time, but you learn from it. You learn from it. When I got back to our roots, we started to really go back up again.
That's a great point. Interesting too. I mean, because there are schools like the Marquettes of the world, right, where there are kids that come from all over. And then you have kind of the more regional, as you were kind of talking about, the 6-hour radius, maybe what do you see positives and negatives to that? Do you feel like if you were able to pick your job tomorrow that was like, I get to work at a school, who has the ability to get anybody from anywhere, like, is that the better one? Or is it somebody who like, hey, we know that it's a 6 hour radius. They have 3 or 4 big city hotbeds or decent sized population where that's who we're going to get. And that's what we know. And we're not really going to spend any other time anywhere else. Like, what do you see with that?
I think they're both the same actually, because if I'm a program that I can just go nationally, I'm really don't have a huge list. If I'm that program, I'm a South Carolina, I'm a UConn, I said I don't have a huge list because I know that I'm going to recruit from the top 30. I'm just recruiting from the top 30. That's not to say when I was at Marquette, we weren't trying to recruit that way, but you also have to be realistic. Let me go back. So Illinois Hustle doesn't exist anymore. Had the number one player in the country when I became a head coach. And every time we went to see Illinois Hustle, every coach in the country was there trying to get the number one player in the country. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching the player that's coming off the bench for her. And because I'm pretty realistic, I'm not getting the number one player. I don't care if she's 1 through 20. I'm probably not going to get her. But I'm watching this other player and her enthusiasm, her ability to make things happen as an undersized post. That post was 6'6". Abby Willenberg, 6'2". She became our all-time leading scorer and rebounder after my first 4 years in the history of Marquette. And then we had
And
Lisa Olberg.
she was coming off the bench in that travel team.
Yes. And I could see a mentality. That other player, that 6'6", we actually played against her, and Abby ate her alive. And because it was heart. And yet that 6'6" player had talent, obviously, but she didn't have the extra get up and go in her at the time. Abby did. And so sometimes it's just seeing past numbers and seeing qualities that you can get. And that was, I mean, we won a whole lot with Abby. And then, like I said, Lisa Oldenburg and Keisha Oliver were my 3 1,000-point scores when they graduated in my first 4 years, 2 locals, and then Abby from Illinois. So I just think when you say what are the advantages and disadvantages, you have to know the strength. I think the amount of talent in Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, in that area is great enough for Marquette, and that's I don't think that's a bad thing. In the whole state of Wisconsin, Wisconsin Flight, there's so many great players. So I just think you have to know who you are and go after it. And again, NIL, things have changed. People go to transfer portal, they recruit off other teams, but I don't want the high school. My personal opinion is I don't want to forget about the high school player that you can develop and that's right in your backyard that will go through a wall for you because their dream is to play at Marquette.
Which kind of seems, and I don't want to speak for him or act like that is the way, but it seems like that's what Shaka's kind of doing at Marquette, right? Where he's kind of doing it the old school way, which I think I appreciate. There's a lot of people out there where it's that continuity and, people that want to be there for the long run,
Right.
which I think is very interesting and special. I guess to touch on what you were talking about, I think it was Abby you talked about that was coming off the bench in that team. And you talked about how much heart she had. Is that something you have to see at an event or in a high school game while you're recruiting her? Or is that something you can learn about that person when they come to campus, when they're meeting with you off the floor? Like, is the heart thing got to be something you see on the court? Or is it something you can kind of realize when you sit down with them and get to know them better?
I think you can't lie about your heart. I think what you see is what you get. I think you can see if you see that on the court, I think you're going to see that in your conversations. You're going to see it with people. And I never want to be an absolute person, but I will say when I made great recruiting decisions, what I saw in that player, their enthusiasm, their love for the school, I had 5 principles: believe, commit, mature, respect, and thankfulness. The very first one was belief. Is something I saw in you and you see in me that we're having this conversation about recruiting, right? Like I'm seeing a talent, a gift, a heart level in you, but you're also saying, hey, Marquette seems to be a pretty special place I want to be at. But the next part is the commit. That you go from a head knowledge to a heart level of what are you going to give. And so when I was right on, that was great. And I say me, obviously I had a great staff that was, Kara's the head coach now in Marquette. Jenny is down in Oklahoma leading their program. Michelle Nason's back at Marquette with Kara. I had an absolutely, so when I say me, I'm talking about all of us, in that the mistakes I made is when I would say a foot in both kingdoms. Like I could see it, but I lied to myself to say, "Oh, no, they'll change when they come here, and they're really gonna love it when they're here." And, if you can't satisfy them in the recruiting process, that very first hard conversation you have with the player, then they're gonna bring it up to you and say, "Well, I shouldn't have come."
Yeah.
My family was right. My AAU coach was right. My high school coach was right. I shouldn't have come. Because when you're a freshman, things inevitably aren't going to go well at some point. You're going to miss home. You're not the big dog on campus anymore. You're finding your way. So I always try to tell people that too. Like, please don't lie to yourself. And what you see, you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches by moving on to the next player and trying not to convince someone to come.
No, I love that. I think honestly, again, not to speak for all coaches, but believing somebody will change or you can change them is probably that toughest thing, right? Where you like that's what you do, right? You lead people and you help grow them and all of that. And so I think that's a real thing. But I love the freshman comment because that's so true, right? Even if you have somebody who comes in and is going to start for you at point guard or whatever position, at some point there's probably an injury. They might get removed from the starting lineup, or they might just have a bad stretch. Like there's something that's going to go wrong in that
They're going to hit
period.
the wall.
If
They're
not,
going to hit the wall.
they don't play at all or whatever, right? Like obviously the best is they're on the court, but eventually something's going to happen. They hit the late season wall or something.
Right.
So
Right.
that is a great nugget. You're talking about your defensive style. Where did you kind of get the background? Was that from you just being a player, or was there somebody that you looked up to, in the coaching world where you're like, God, I love what they do defensively.
Just love defense. I love shutting people down. Like I said, yes, offense is sexy and I get it. But I also think there's a satisfaction to defense and strategy and outthinking your opponent. And they call a timeout and they think you're a man and you come out in zone and they're shaking their head and the point guard. I always wanted to confuse the point guard. When I became a head coach at 28, Marcia Sharp, Texas Tech had just won the national championship. And so I watched their 1-1-3 and I watched what they did with it in the zone. I'm a big believer in switching up defense. I know there are people that are man 100%, or there are people that will play zone, like Boeheim when he was at Syracuse. They're going to play that 2-3. I love to switch. Now, I say that with the caveat of if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like if we are just shutting somebody down, I love to use our zone because the 1-1-3, the second, ball hawk is the first person, the rover is second. They stopped all penetration. They had a very special role of doubling, stopping all penetration. So teams that couldn't shoot it, we would stay in zone a little bit more. But I took her defense and just made it my own and just every year just tweaked it. And during COVID, I put out a video because we were all just thinking of things to do because I was out recruiting when we got the word. I just landed in Oklahoma when we got the word that
Really?
the NCAA just shut everything down. And so when I was talking to Josh Peterson, who's now at Kentucky, but I was talking to him, he was a recruiting coordinator. He goes, "We're just sending you right to Milwaukee." Because my mom at the time had Alzheimer's and I had taken care of her 3 years and my sister was taking care of her now in this stretch. So they said, you can't be in the office. So we'd rather just send you back there so you can spend this time with her. And which was great. But there I am in Oklahoma. So now I get back to Milwaukee and, having this precious time with my mom. I decided to show my defense in 1 minute with stuffed animals on a outdoor basketball court. And so I explained everything real quick. And I just said, if you have questions, let me know. I'll send you all my information. And to the date, I think I'm up to 280 or 300 that I have sent my defensive stuff out to.
Really?
Um,
Was that on YouTube or TikTok or not TikTok, but at that time, but what was that on?
I put it on probably Twitter. Yeah,
Twitter, yeah.
yeah, X, Twitter. Yeah, put it on there. And so I have sent to high school coaches, AU coaches, men and women. I mean, it's been great. I actually just recently, a coach in New Jersey reached out to me and I took him through some things and he took his team to the state, to state championship, that they'd never have been to. And just because of the defense.
Really?
Yeah. So
How
it's just,
I mean, how good does that feel? Like knowing, hey, we had this conversation, right? Like, and yes, you weren't in the building, you weren't, but like obviously you helped them. So like, how does that feel?
amazing because people are like, "Why do you share all your information?" And I'm like, "Because you have to teach it. You have to know how to teach it." So you can listen, film, we all know each other's secrets. There are no secrets. I'm going to give you all my ideas, but at the end of the day, you have to be a teacher that commits to it. You have to be somebody that is able to do it. So, yeah, I love it. I will talk all day long, and for me, I just like, I'm itching to hopefully, if I get a shot again to be a coach, I've made it better, and so I wanna be able to have the opportunity to teach it again.
I'm gonna have to go back and we will make sure to share that video in clips or whatever. That sounds like the greatest video ever, especially during that time because it's like, I mean, as we all know, right? Like there was just such an odd
Right.
time in the world and stuff like that. So super interesting. Yeah, very cool. You obviously shared, what was recruiting piece of where you're like, okay, this is where I think we had a dip at Marquette. Obviously you had an absolute great run there as an assistant, like I said before, but then as a head coach, I believe it was 7 NCAA appearances, 4 Conference USA regular season titles. You won the NIT in 2000, and in 2014 you step away. How tough of a decision was that? And just leaving Marquette based on how much you had invested since basically '91 there.
Yeah, really tough. Very unexpected. The whole conversation of, we're moving in another direction, and you don't expect to hear it coming off a 22 win season. But I will say this at the time, and this is a really good point. Misery loves company. When that happened to me, I was just in a fog. I was in a fog for like, what just happened? And of course, you're out and about in the community, and it's a small community, and people are like, hey, what happened? And misery loves company, right? And they want to talk about it. And then I realized, you know what? I'm stuck in a moment, and I have 18 years to be thankful for. I just got done telling you my principles: believe, commit, mature, respect, and thankfulness. Mature is, hey, you grow from every situation. And thankfulness is, it's what keeps you getting up every day when you are thankful for the opportunity. I had 23 years at the university, I had 18 as a head coach. And we were just in a transition time. I never had an agent. So from 2007 to 2014, we just had a lot of different leadership. And it was just this time that Marquette was going through. Bill Cordes had stepped down. And then we had, interim ADs as they were just kind of like within the university, just like, hey, what are we trying to do? And then they hired, and then that person left. And then we had another interim, and then they hired someone else, and then that person left. And that all happened within 7 years. So I'm just plugging away, doing my job. And honestly, I need to be more realistic about those last 7 years, right? Of what I needed. And like I said, I made that mistake. And then things were back on the rise. Like we were starting to rise again. We had gone to the NCAA tournament. And actually, that 22 win season, we just missed the tournament. Actually, I was very disappointed that we didn't get in. I thought we were one of the teams that they talked about. I thought we should have been in, but I was excited that we were going to come back the next year. And then I left for the Final Four, and I came back, and it was just one of those like, hey, Buzz had left. He went to Virginia. He went to
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, and then Bond had left to go to Iowa to coach, and it was just one of those. We're bringing a new president, we're bringing a new AD, and we're just going to start over. And so I was like, so unexpected, but it doesn't take away all the great days, and it gave me time. And a friend of mine, said to me, and this was some of the best advice, that God already has it next for you. It's already planned. And I knew down deep, I'm one of four, and my other three siblings are married. And we all could kind of see my dad already passed away. We could see my mom was slipping a little bit. You want to lie to yourself and say, oh, it's not happening. It was happening. And so those 3 years were to care for her. And I would never trade that ever. And people are like, "Oh, if you stepped away, you're never gonna get back in." And I totally disagree with that, because I'm like, you take care of the people that take care of you. And so that was a precious time with my mom, and then my sister did it for the last 3 years.
Yeah. No, that's special, and I really appreciate you saying that because I think that's, and I've had some of the same stuff too, where at first there is which I think you said it perfectly, right? It's just that fog, and yet you're out, and there's things, and people are talking to you, and like you're not trying to be down, you're trying to be up, but then people are also like, well, you're being way too positive. Like I know that's not how you feel, and but
Right.
then you go through that stage where you're like you flip it around, and then you look back on life, and I lost my dad in a car accident a few years ago, and it was kind of the
Sorry.
same thing, like where it's like, yeah, I got out of coaching, and had I got the job that I wanted, I would still be doing it, and I would be going it as hard as I'm sure you did and everybody else does, right? Because that's just what you do. But then you look back and you're like, actually, if I was still in it, I wouldn't have had time to get back home to hang out to, just little things that you're like, actually, maybe this is what it was supposed to be. In some ways, it's kind of funny how you look back. So I appreciate you saying that because it's a great way to reflect and look on that time.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was really like one of those tap on the shoulder experiences for me, and you would appreciate this, coaches, we have our cliches, right? And I used to say, excellence never has an off button. You're going to be excellent on the court and off the court. That's who you are, right? You say that stuff. So here I am taking care of my mom. Like my life has gone from 100 to zero, right? Because I went from traveling all over the country, recruiting, being on the phone, TV show, like all that stuff that just the
Doesn't stop.
energy. Right, to taking care of someone who doesn't know how to make a meal and tucking my mom in and putting her to bed and turning the light out, like all those things. So sometimes I was a little grumpy and the human side of me and she loved to go to the library. And all of a sudden I just hear this little voice, it's my voice saying, "Are you being excellent?" Because excellent has no off button. And I thought, wow, I better take my own advice. And when I go to the library, be the most excellent person in here with my mom and have joy and smile because for her, that was the most important thing. And making her dinner and just listening to the same stories over and over and over. But to be able for her, she'd look at me sometimes and she's like, "Did I say this?" I'm like, "Oh, mom, no, I'm enjoying this." And just, laughing with her, taking her to the zoo. She loved the zoo. And just having those moments that you're never going to get back. But that was the most important thing. And I became an excellent caretaker, and I just love, I mean, I always loved my mom, there's no doubt, but I really need to step my game up because I was finding myself like, and then when I really had that itch of like, I want to get back, my sister and her husband, they had moved out to Wisconsin. They're in Brookfield.
Okay.
And they said, "We'll do it now." And they kind of were having the same itch, like, okay, it's our time to take care of mom.
Sure.
And so it worked out perfectly.
Well, that's great that the whole family jumped in, and that's interesting how you heard that voice, right? Your inner self
Yeah.
kind of speaking
Yeah.
to yourself about that.
Right.
Whether it was at Marquette or Arizona State or Pittsburgh, like we'll talk a little bit about here. Did you ever study anything on the men's side, whether it was sitting down with Coach Crean, Coach Williams, any of the assistants, or like you said, you're talking about Coach Boeheim with the 2-3 zone. Like, did you ever look at things like that, or was it really like a women's basketball, two other women's basketball programs or friends that you had across the country, or were you literally like, I'll study any basketball wherever it's good and how we can apply it?
Basketball. Basketball, basketball, basketball. Love clinics. Love actually, I do a lot of my learning just watching games. Most people, they have their whatever, their FBI, their CSI. Mine is basketball. Like, okay, what game can I watch? And I think you can learn. You can always learn, men's, women. So I would watch Coach Crean's. I'd watch Buzz's practice. I stopped into Shaka's practice last year, picked up some things. I think if you just pick up one or two tweaks, things that they look, went to Kara's practice, stopped at Louisville's practice this year. I'll do any kind of high school. I mean, I've taken drills when I've gone to recruit and they're running a good practice. I steal their drills. We all steal from each other
Right.
and it's philosophies. But before we got on the air, we were talking about just having the ESPN app. And if I see a close game, I tune in because I want to watch what is the coach's philosophy down the stretch? What are they doing? And I don't think it's magical. I think what is magical is that you actually work on it because, in practice plans, what gets bumped to the end all the time is end of game situations because you're
Yeah.
mad about the shell defense that just didn't go the way you wanted to go. And then you realize you're 10 games in the season and you really haven't mastered those end of game situations that are so critical. So that's a kind of another sticking point for me that has to be top of the list for games. I mean, at Pitt, we were let go at Pitt. We were competitive. Like I think the one year we had 13 games that we were leading or tied going into the fourth quarter and lost. That's details. And that's end of game
End of
situation.
game. Yeah.
And we bumped those off the list a lot because of other things. So I feel like more equipped now going back as an assistant because you're a head coach and you know what you need, but then you kind of forget the needs of an assistant and how a program runs. And then you're on the other side of it for those 5 years. I think if ever given the opportunity, I'd be a better head coach now because I've been on both sides.
Interesting. And I do think, I love football, but I had a lot of the same stuff kind of end of my basketball career. Like you were saying, were a lot of close games, right? You're losing by 3, 5 points. And a lot of it was end of game, special situations type stuff. And it's funny how you can watch any sport. But I always think of like football or basketball, and you can tune into any game in the last few minutes, and there'll be 30 seconds left, no timeouts, and the staff of whatever team is just freaking out and screaming like crazy, right? And you can instantly tell, like, this hasn't been worked on enough, right? There's certain things where it could be, maybe you have a bunch of backups or whatever, but at the end of the day, you were not prepared enough for that situation. And now you have three or four people screaming, and you can just imagine that individual in the court that's looking, and they're getting all these different, and it's like, there's
Right.
no way they're taking that in. It's just, and then there's others, right? Where it's just like, hey, here we go. Like we're sitting back, and it's just,
Yeah.
you can just see it as clear as day, whether it's been practiced and prepared or not.
Absolutely, and I love football as well, and I see the same things. You can tell who is comfortable at the end of a game. They have this is like say you want to in practice, you want to make your players uncomfortable. I mean, you have to capture as close to a game as you can by making them comfortable. But I used to tell our point guards is you have to be us on the court. If we didn't have a timeout, I need to know that you can run this, that you know exactly what we need. And that just has to come from everyday consistency of that message to the point guard or to your leaders on the court.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in saying what you said about, being an assistant and associate head coach at Pitt, I know you did a special assistant gig at Arizona State after Marquette as well. Were you ever able to, in that time of Arizona State and then going to Pitt, were you ever able to step back from the Marquette time and think like an assistant, or did you kind of go straight from head coach to I am an assistant, but I'm still thinking with like my head coach kind of hat on? Where now it seems like you've totally have a reflective stance of like, hey, I've really been able to look back at all my years, and obviously you're still like a lifelong learner, going in and taking in a ton of practices and watching games. Were you able to kind of take that head coach hat off and go back in time as an assistant, or was it kind of like I'm really kind of like the head assistant here, and we're just kind of plugging away like I kind of did at Marquette?
Yeah, I think it was more the latter. I was more the head coach mentality, trying to impart that knowledge. And it did take me a while to adjust back to being an assistant. Like, here's your group of people that you're responsible for. Because I was always thinking whole, 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 and I had to go back to the part. So that's why I think I appreciated that essence, that learning time of going back to the parts. Like, the whole doesn't happen without the assistants doing the parts. And what does you need. I gave a talk a couple weeks ago, but I did this at a head coaching training seminar of knowing what does your head coach need, as an assistant. And it's interesting because it really made me think. It's like own your space. Like I'm not no longer thinking of the whole program. I got to own my space as the defensive coordinator, which I loved, obviously, and as the other hats that I was given, but those wing players, those wing players. It was point guard for a while that I had, which I enjoyed because I thought like, well, that's the coach on the court is the point guard, and then I shifted over to the wings. But then just to keep the line of communications open with your head coach, right? Like what came natural to me as a head coach to communicate, I had to make sure that I was constantly like not just doing things on an island to make sure, hey, does the head coach know what I'm doing? So always keep it open, keep perspective. When you're not in charge, right? You want to be like, oh, this is how I want to do it. And then you realize your perspective is different now. And don't think things personal. It's just a perspective. So there's learning that I did that I think you pass, but it helped me. And it made me, if I always said, if I get another shot to be a head coach, I'm going to be so much more in tune to the assistants of what they need to make this thing go right.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you get better? Obviously, you've been getting out to a lot of practices and stuff like that. Is there things that you read, whether it's weekly, monthly, or certain books that you like even look back of like, I read this book and I would, because there's just some books I feel like that are out there that, right, that never lose kind of their age in terms of what was written about them and what impact they can kind of give to people. Is there anything out there that you use to get better, whether it's newsletters, podcasts, anything?
Well, right now, I mean, I'm looking back at some of the things that Bob Bodine, said the
Yep.
power of who, the two chairs. I'm going back to read those. I actually read two chairs before. That's more, faith based relationship. The power of who is what I'm reading right now. But I would say service is reading is great and I'm getting back to it. But I've in this time of learning, I think serving is the best way that I can describe the space that I'm in right now. Because when you want to do something, right? So I want to be coaching right now and it hasn't happened. I don't want to just sit back. So I go, how can I serve the greater community? So like in this last year of my life, I was Peru on a missions trip. I was Africa on a missions trip. I help out an organization my dear friend Diane Studer runs called Souls for Jesus, where we collected shoes when I was at Marquette. But I was with them on the missions trip when the 1 millionth pair of shoes has been shipped. When I was in Pittsburgh on Sunday nights, I would feed the homeless. We would meet Sunday night and we'd go out. I just think serving is learning. I think
Yeah.
it's always constantly saying to yourself, like, all right, I had 30 years of coaching. Is it over? I hope it's not over. But what can I do out of that 30 years? So, like last year, when you talk about learning, I try to pull what I've learned from books and things I've written down. So, I did not last year, the year before, 10 videos of lessons from the hardwood. I did like 3 to 5 minute videos and I took through 10 lessons of things that I learned through my years of coaching. So when you say podcast, it's basically people sending me things and say, "Hey, look at this," and I'll pop on and I'll read it. I go through YouTube and try to find something. But right now, it's more watching games because I think you just learn a lot through practicing games about strategy. And I just keep a notebook and I
Yeah.
just write things down and say, "Hey, if the opportunity comes, I'll be ready. And if it doesn't come, that my life is to serve other people and encourage them and teach the best I can to help the next generation." So, like, I mentor a bunch of 30 somethings. I get on the phone with them and it's just listening to them where they're through and then helping them get to the next page.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you that if there was any type of like, because it seemed like with obviously what you were sharing about with the service stuff, which is phenomenal. That to me it was like, there's got to be some type of mentor thing here with you then too, where it's like,
It's
because
all
just 'cause-
organic. Yeah,
yeah,
it's organic. It's just people reaching out that I've kind of been consistently with. Sometimes I get called and say, "Hey, will you come and talk to my team? Will you come down?" And it's all there's no price tag to this. There's no trying to it's just it's a game that gave me so much and how can I give back? And when I became a head coach, Jill Hutchinson, who was like a big deal at the time at Illinois State, and she was president of the WBCA, said to me, when you be now that you're a head coach, make sure you get involved in your organization. And so I did everything from the All American Committee to conference captain to legislation. Sat I was on the WBCA legislative chair to the executive committee because I believe that you can't be mad about things in your organization if you don't know what's going on. And so I got if there wasn't a committee that I wasn't on. And so I could be, and I served my time and then it's time to pass it on. But I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Where can I serve? What can I learn about so I can help others in the next situation and teach them? So that's really the place that I'm at. And again, I don't think I'm done. I think I think there's a lot still in me, but I have to be realistic,
sure,
of the time that has passed since I've been a head coach. And I've had opportunities and people have pursued me, but it wasn't the right thing for me. And I might be a little bit more picky, but I don't want a perfect world, but there are certain standards that I want of a program or where I think it should be. So I just
yeah,
sit and wait. In the meantime, you know, I just want to help people out. I want to get on a podcast and talk
yeah.
about.
I think you've given your time where you can be a little picky though too. You know what I mean? Where it's like, and which is good. Like honestly, if you're out there and you're trying to take any job that's out there, that's probably not a good thing, right? Like there should be
Right.
some standards of like whether it's commitment from the school or whatever, right? That's just like, hey, we need to be aligned here before we move forward and take this. Well, I had to share this with you because I talked to you about this, and you probably can't see with the blur of the screen here, but
Oh, market. There it
this
is.
is from March 19th of 2001. So my wife played D2 for a year before going D3. So this is the closest thing that we have in our house to Division 1 as an athlete in the family here, with us
Love it.
being D3 people. But is that something you'd ever be open to? Is level? Does it level matter to you, or is it more so just really about right fit and everything, how everything would align?
I think it's right fit. I think the thing about D3 that I really respect that's really out is it's not about scholarships, it's about packages. And so
Sure.
I actually did early on talk to a D3 when I was in that in between stage of my life before I went to Arizona State. But I honestly felt ill equipped because I didn't know how the packages work and I didn't think
True.
it was something. So it wasn't about talent. It wasn't about I just love basketball. I'm really just open. I had somebody I interviewed once, I won't say the school, but they said to me, "Well, I think you're acting like this is a Marquette or something." And I said, "Well, not or a Pitt." No, I was at Pitt at the time, the ACC and I said, "Well, no, actually, I'm just speaking on behalf of like a commitment. It's
Mhm.
not about a dollar sign. It's where you are in your conference. are you committed
Right.
in your level? Not, not comparing to the ACC, not comparing, I'm comparing where you are. Are you committed to being the best within your very own conference?
Yeah.
And, so then I knew that that wasn't, I wasn't asking for the world. I wasn't saying, "Hey, we got charter everywhere. We gotta do things." I was just asking about very basic questions
Yep.
about what it is. So I've learned. I mean, I've learned interviewing, and I have, like I said, I've had some offers that it just didn't, feel right. Um, I've had some people say, "Why'd you stay at Marquette so long?" Because there's twice in my career, and I loved it. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong when you love a place,
Yep.
and I wanted to retire there, and I wanted to be like, give it my all and just walk away. And the thing is, it's okay. It happened and life moved on and everyone's happy and good and there's no ill feelings. And I want Marquette to win all the time,
Yeah.
and that's how much I care. I'll be there Friday night cheering them on. So it's all good.
You
It's
just
just life is, you know what? Life is too short. You always have to find the positive in everything.
right. You just bounce back.
Absolutely, and you get better, and you have a more realistic view of yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know that when I first was like, "Go Marquette," or walked away, however you wanna put it. I mean, it's like, I think it was pretty obvious to everybody, "Oh, I'm resigning." Okay. I mean, if you woulda come to me 10 years ago and said, "You wanna do this podcast," I probably would've been like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds a little weird, fired." And the reality is it's what it is, and it's your choice then. Are you gonna grow from it? Are you gonna get better? Or are you gonna feel sorry for yourself? And I feel like I've bounced back really well and have enjoyed life and basketball, and I feel like there's so much more to give. It's just a game I love, and I love it because it's the interaction every day of the people you're around. I still talk to men's coaches at Pitt because I was with them down the hall, learning from them, going in their office. Tim O'Toole, associate head coach, he is a mastermind of basketball.
Legend. Yeah.
He's amazing, and I still to this day we text, we talk. I think those things are so important. That's what I miss. I love being in my local community, but I miss the energy of the college and the university.
For sure. And the people, right? That's what it always I always said
Yes,
when people it's funny whenever you leave and this isn't necessarily just always associated to athletics, but it's funny whenever you leave a job, right? And people are like, "Oh, do you miss the job?" And it's like, well, yeah, there's pieces of it, right? But it's at the end of the day, the always answer is I miss the people, right? That you're around, whether that's a team, a coworker, your boss, whoever it is, it's usually the people that you really kind of miss being associated with. And obviously there's part of that that comes with that energy too. Well, Coach Mitchell, Terry, I appreciate you honestly taking some time. This is awesome. Really love the perspective that you have and, being in it, being out of it for a little bit, like being re-energized, watching games all the time. Like it's like all the different things that you'd want out of somebody who really gave it their all and is like, hey, I still got, some more meat to chew off on the bone here. Like I'm still ready to go and I'm watching games and I'm getting better. So this has been awesome. I appreciate you taking some time here tonight.
well, thank you, Marcus. This was fun for me. I love it, and I just hope if somebody's listening, they get something out of it that encourages them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Appreciate you taking the time and best of luck finding the next gig here.
Okay, thank you.